Well, g'day everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we are back again. Now, I'm just going to hand over to Damo, but Damo, mate, you came up with a cracking idea for an episode today, mate. Do you want to actually let the listeners in on what you thought about?
Well, mate, it's really simple, and that I like simple stuff because I'm a fairly simple kind of bloke. So, what's happened is that obviously my current job, like we train firefighters and we do first aid and we do all this. Really, it's interesting. I quite love what I do. But one thing I do is I train a lot of people in how to use radios. And as a result, and I use radios a lot because I'm a bloody, I'm an RFS volunteer. So we're always talking on radios when we go into jobs and things like that. And it for me, and for you, it's just second nature. Like a radio is such an easy thing to use. It's so familiar. It's just such a part of our life that you almost feel naked without one. And it's
Yeah,
funny because most of society feel very, very, I don't know, uncomfortable with radios. And it got me thinking,
yeah,
radios are such an important part of what we used to do. The other thing was, and so there's two parts to what we were probably going to talk about now. So, one, we're going to talk about how the police use radio communications and how there's different channels for different things, but how they're not just a communication device. They call signs indicate what vehicle's doing what, and there's a lot to it, and we'll go into that. But also,
yeah.
the other thing that happened the other day, I did a first aid course in Dorrigo just a couple of days ago, and one of my offsiders, Patsy, God bless her, she was helping me out. And while I was running a scenario, it was a pretty serious scenario, and I'll explain that a bit more later. She put on her phone the sound of a siren. And it was funny because we are getting into the scenario a bit. And when I heard that siren, something triggered inside me, and I felt empowered. All of a sudden, I felt good because I could hear the sirens coming. And this was a scenario. It was a first aid scenario inside a community hall. And that made me think that it's an unusual thing. And I saw that response in civilians who've never been around emergency services doing a first aid course, that even with no experience whatsoever in that realm, when they heard that siren, there was something in them that went, thank God, like, oh my God, thank God for those sirens. And I thought there would be so many people in this world who have heard those sirens coming and really, really needed assistance. And all of a sudden they knew that help was on its way. There's something about that. So
Yeah.
I think, mate, today we can talk about two things. And I think I'd like to talk about radio communications and how it's a bit of a dying art because mobile phones now are so prolific that people don't think of it two-way as the way you communicate. Whereas, you think back 20 years ago, everyone had a phone hanging on the wall of their house, but when
Yeah.
they're out doing jobs, they still got to communicate remotely and mobile while being mobile. And that was all the domain of UHF comms and VHF, and for the
Yep.
really long range stuff, it was HF. So I think we can talk a little bit about radio communications in the modern world and how it works, and then we can probably talk about how we could tell what people were thinking over the radio, because all police, all fire, all emergency services, AMBOs, and the military will just know what we mean when we start talking about how a radio sounds. And
Yep.
then I think we can also talk about when you're squawking over the radio and all of a sudden you hear sirens and just that sweet sound. Yeah, mate, I reckon we can. I just came up with it. It's a simple thing, but I think it could be a good little episode. So,
Mate.
mate, we can flick it back and forth, but do you want to start up about it, about
Yeah,
the
mate.
use of radios?
I was just thinking, like, there's a story, and I think I mentioned it briefly once before, but like, so back in the day, we used to do a lot of front counter stuff. So we used to do the communications in the station. So we were, I suppose, the admin where we'd put on the jobs, and we would, send the officers out to jobs and all that sort of thing. That's something we had to do in Catherine because we didn't have the communications that Darwin and Alice Springs had back in those days. So, I mean, that came later on. But I was working a night shift, and I remember one of the crews, they came across this incident. Obviously, I sent them to this job. Anyway, they were outnumbered. It was something like 6 to 2, and it was getting pretty hostile. And I remember I can, even when I think back now, it actually gives me like, a bit of, I suppose, emotion about it, because I can remember thinking at the time you could hear it wasn't panic, it was just concern in the officer's voice, because they're outnumbered, they needed backup. And of course, I called for backup, but of course, I think one was probably out about 10 Ks out, and I think the other one was a little bit further. So you're sitting there going, oh shit, they need them right now. In fact, I was closer to those officers being in the station, but I couldn't go anywhere because I had to look after the radio. My duty was to make sure that everything was covered. But the the thing, you want to be there. You want to help your mates. You kind of you. I think one of the things of police officers is not being there for your mates when they really need you, and that it. I remember even thinking back, that really affected me, because I wanted to be there. I wanted to help my mates. I wanted to stand beside them because they were in trouble and outnumbered and all that sort of thing. And anyway, they managed one thing police are very, very good at. That's delaying the inevitable. So obviously, they were just trying to calm the situation as much as they could. They knew they couldn't do it for too long, but they managed to level it out just enough. And I remember hearing the sirens when they made a radio call. I could hear the sirens in the background, and of course, I knew, because I was also talking to the unit, how far away they were. And to hear those sirens over their radio coming through to me just gave me such like relief,
Yeah,
because I knew they were going to get backed up. And of course, then you hear them coming, and the officer just called over. Yep, they're here, and I could hear the car doors open and slam. And I'm just going, all right, it's on for young and old now.
yeah. We win now, boys.
It's now it. But I mean, I still remember that every call, every emotion that I went through. It was pretty significant. But that's how important the radio is, and the important part of when you are actually the comms operator, to make sure that there's clear communication between all sides, mate. So do you want to crack on a bit more about that?
Mate, so the radio has been, I think, emergency services, and look, in the pioneering days of Australia, when especially out west, HF radio and radio has been such an important communication device. In the police, we've been talking now for what, 84 episodes or 85 episodes or something
This was
ridiculous.
84.
There you go. So 84 episodes. And we've mentioned radio comms, but we've never spoken about it explicitly because it's just part of your uniform. Like, you wouldn't go anywhere without a radio.
Yeah,
You
that's
just
right.
wouldn't think of it. So, um, realistically, when you're in, and we're talking general duties here, when you're doing general duties in a police vehicle, and this is every jurisdiction in the bloody Western world at least, and I would even suggest the second and third world, the one thing you've got is a radio to communicate back to a base of some sort. So we, in our later years, we had very high-tech digital radios that are half radio, half mobile phone. They communicate through the internet, so they go to they're still a radio transceiver, but they go back through the basically the 4G network, going to the internet, and by computing, they go back to where they're meant to go, because that's all programmed into the channels that we use. And as a result, we can communicate with Darwin comms in real time from anywhere in the territory, like a phone, but it's a radio. It's a portable radio, and you've got that. As long as you've got contact with remote communities are a bit trickier, but we used to communicate with satellite as well. But having a radio on you was just such a fundamental part of your job, and you don't even think about it. It's like putting your shirt on. We don't talk about the fact we wore a shirt. It's the same. We don't talk about the fact we always had a radio. And I don't know, the reason I thought of this was that using a radio to communicate is so incredibly foreign to so much of the population. And I find that when we're teaching, when I teach a lot of people how to use the radio, we're talking higher end. So we go, right, we use call signs, we do this. They go, what's a radio? And I dumb it right down. I go, right, everybody reach into their pocket and pull out their mobile phone and hold it up. And they're like, righto. And it's like, that is a radio.
Yeah.
It's just a very, very sophisticated radio, but it is a radio. It's a secure, two-way, digitally encrypted radio. However, what we use in the police is the old style broadcast transceiving radio, and it, obviously there's more complexities to them now, but for a long time there wasn't. They were just a VHF or a UHF radio that went back to a
On aerial.
a base. Basically,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
simplex back to a base, or it used a repeater or whatever. But because I get into the complexities now, I just got interested in it more, and I've used radios my whole life. Like this is going to sound stupid to the army guys. Well, I was a school cadet when I was at high school. I was in the army cadets, and we were taught to use correct radio telephony, which is the correct military radio use and the protocols. And they're quite strict. The military is very strict on how you use a radio because they need to know call signs and all the rest of it. And we were like that in the police, but the conversations had to communicate. So we were less formal and more about getting the information across. But even to this day, I find myself, so all of the major, and they might vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but traditionally they all were VK, which is generally Australia, and the third little number, we used to say VKM. So I know that Queensland was VKR, New South Wales was VKG, Victoria traditionally was VKC, and I'm not sure about the others, but that was traditionally the base. So you're communicating back to your organisation that had the license to use that radio network. So as a result, we used to, especially when you're doing this every day for hours and hours and hours, you're constantly talking on a radio. So the way we'd do it would be we're always talking to VKM, which was our comms. And everything you said was VKM. So that you'd start every conversation with VKM, and then you would say your call sign. So in Catherine, we had 480, 481, 253. There was a few others,
Yeah.
And it was VKM 481. So VKM 481. And straight away, comms would come back and go 481 send. So it was weird how we just used this terminology without even thinking about it. But it was us in that conversation by saying 3 letters and 3 numbers, we've gone, hey, comms, this is us, and this is this particular unit, and we want to talk to you. And so VKM 481, go ahead, or 481 send. That was quite often what was said. And it's the way it was done. And we did it subconsciously. Like we completely didn't even think about what we were saying. And then we'd just speak in normal English what was happening. So, yeah, Roger, 481, we've attended this location, blah, 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 blah. We rattle off whatever information we've got. And they go, 481 VKM, Roger, copy all. Do you require blah, 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 blah. It was just this conversation went back and forth. It was just like when you say it to a layperson, they just go, huh? and it's like to us, it was just the lingo. It was the language of policing.
Yeah.
And now it's funny because we get in our fire trucks now and I'll go, Firecom, E-ball 1 or something similar to that. And it's the same thing, but it's different call signs. And I've grabbed that radio, no shit, and I've said, yeah, VKM, Firecom, E-ball 1. Because I got so used to grabbing a radio. And I think one of the comms must have known something about policing. They've gone, yeah, wrong service, mate. But anyway, yeah, we're gone here. So it was like, it was, it's just an interesting thing to talk about. And I mean, we can talk about that. That's just the use of radios. They were so intertwined into our life that we don't even think about them. And I think the reason they were so important is because that was where everything happened through the radio. So we'd walk out, and I'll sort of talk you through a shift. We'd go out, we'd have a briefing generally inside as a constable. So I'll just talk it from a constable level. Your sergeant will come out. And obviously later on I was the sergeant and you were the sergeant, and we give the briefing. But as your bones-ass 23-year-old constable walking out to your patrol car with your partner, you've had a briefing on what's occurred the last shift, who's in custody, what's gone on there, any trends that Intel would give a bit of a report that's to be the daily report out to the patrol groups. And you would be given that information. You might be handed a piece of paper with the outstanding warrants. Alice Springs was particularly good at this. They'd hand out a piece of paper, like a printout to each crew, and it was an intel brief of the Alice Springs DV targets. So these guys are arrest targets. It might be that someone's investigated something a shift or 2 or 3 or 4 before, and there's an outstanding offender for that particular one. So it might be these are the people that are hot to be arrested. These are your warrants. So it'll be a printout of all the warrants of apprehension. So anyone that you would just see and go, oh shit, I know where that bloke's live. We'll just duck by that house quickly and see if he's there, like things like that. So an intel brief, you get that information, and it might be other things like, oh, and by the way, it's Schultzy's birthday. The poor bastard's 105. So shit like that. It was always done like that, and that was our briefing. And then you'd walk out, and you'd always have your portable radio on, and you'd clock it on, and you might even log on. So what we used to do as a unit was you'd get your vehicle and you go out and make sure your vehicle's right, and you'd do the handover from the previous shift. And this cannot quite happen very quickly because you might have an urgent job that you're just running out the door to. So you grab your radio, and before you're even out the door, you'd be on your portable, which is your personal radio. So something that clips onto your hip, and a coil handpiece comes up over your shoulder and sits right next to you on your collar generally. And you might even log on then, and it'd be your VKM 481 log on details and ready. And that'll be through channel 2 because you've got multiple channels. And channel 1 was generally your dispatch channel. So that's comms. You're talking to and from comms, and you're giving sit reps to and from comms. And then you had your inquiries channel, which was channel 2. So you could just quickly change the channel just by turning a knob on the radio that was on your belt. And you would then talk to VKM again, because it's all VKM, but you're on the inquiries channel. So that's where you could have a bit more of an in-depth conversation and find out information. So we'd log on through channel 2, and you get onto channel 2, and it was VKM 481 log on details and ready. It was like, 481 VKM, good morning, send details when ready. It's like, yeah, roger. So today we've got member 2771, and the much better looking member is blah, 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 blah. We'd always have a bit of a joke, especially as senior members, you'd have a bit of a laugh. And they would log you into the computer.
2793 you're looking for, mate.
2793. So it'll be, VKM. So it'll be VKM 481, log on details and ready. They come back, go 481 VKM, send details. We go, yeah, roger, today we have 2793, and the much better looking member being 2771. And we are mobile. We are day shift, Alice Springs General. That'd be Catherine, because they're Catherine units. So day shift, Catherine general duties until 1600 hedge copy. Something like that. So bang, bang, back and forth. You say this stuff without even thinking because you just did it every day. But it's speaking another language, and there was lingo back and forth, and you sort of have a joke with comms, and that just keeps morale high. But that radio was the source of everything. And there was the other joke where the newbies would always get in the car with their portables on, and if you spoke through the car radio, it would squeal because you got feedback through. So you had to turn your radio off when you got in the car, and you just get used to it. It becomes completely second nature over time.
Yeah.
But you get in there and then you grab the vehicle, and they can see what's going on. Because the other thing that I missed before was you would say portable number Catherine 40 or something. So they would know what portable was linked to what member. Yeah. So the log on would be members 2771 with portable 40, member 2793 with portable 58. Yeah, roger, and they would log that into the system. So there was a computer system that had all that behind. And every time Catherine portable 40 broadcast, they knew that I was talking. So it was a security thing. It's a safety device. It's your lifeline. Yeah. And then when you got in the vehicle and you actually transmitted over the vehicle radio, it would be Catherine 481. Yeah. So you would have that. They would know that Catherine 481 is transmitting. You'd still say it because it's recorded, but you would have that recorded digitally anyway.
It's in case you hit the emergency button.
And that's right. Like that. And yeah, we'll get into that too. So the comms back and forth back when we first started was pretty basic. It was that real VHF, real basic. There was no real digitalness to it. It was just voices over the radio. And that's why that it got real, hey?
You could listen in. There was people that used to listen into our conversations.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's with the old police scanners. People could scan and listen, and that's why you had to keep it professional. And that's why traditionally back in the day people had codes. So if you listen to the Americans talk now, they still use the 10 codes, which was something that was developed in the States for basically encoding conversation that could be listened to by anybody. So, 10-4 was basically all good or at location, or, something positive was 10-4. And then they had a 10 code for everything. So it might be like a 10-12 as an officer down or whatever. So, and they used to use it in general conversation. So it'll be, we're 10-4. It's all, we're 10-4. We're sweet. And that was, we're good. So 10-4 was basically all in order. And we used to use that term, all in order. It's a very old English term, but what used to happen was if you'd go off at a job, so you turn up to the job and go, VKM 481, we're off at location. So we'd been dispatched because what the radio comms before that might have been Yeah, 481 VKM, can I get you a 2 or 10? Blah, 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 blah. And you'll return back just going VKM 481, yeah, acknowledge we're attending such and such locations, Marcus Mobile, so blah, 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 and hit the lights and sirens, off you go. As you pull up at the location, it'd be VKM 481 off at location. So they know where they sent you and you're off at the job. And then you deal with the job, and the radio comms is, you've got the radio right next to your ear, but you're talking to people and you're dealing with the problem. And then it was weird because you were always listening to the radio, and this took time. This took a bit of experience. And I remember when I first started, the radio would make noise, and I'd be talking to my partner, and he'd go, "Oi, that was us, mate." Because what would have happened was the radio would have gone 481 VKM, and I'm this ISO. I was like, "Oh, you're the radio man, mate. That's us." I was, "Oh shit, sorry. Yeah, VKM 481. Yes, and you'd learn how to use it." But over time, you could be having a raucous conversation with 4 or 5 people, and subconsciously you would hear VKM 481, and you just go stop, and everyone would stop talking, and you grab the radio and go 481 VKM send, and it was just just natural.
It was like second nature.
Like, it was just unbelievable. So and it's a very unique skill set, but I think it was so ingrained that we just don't even think about it. One thing that they used to say, just talking about that old English stuff, was when you'd been offered a job for maybe 5-10 minutes or something, you'd get 481 VKM all in order. Basically, it's a safety check. Are you guys okay? Because you've been offered this job for a while, and you just quietly go, "Yeah, VKM 481 all in order," and it was just you letting them know that you're all good. It was just the response, because what would happen would they would then go, they'd give you a minute or so, and they go 481 VKM all in order, second call. And then everyone else who's driving around is hearing this. So they're going, why aren't they responding? They were off at that job, and they might start, and then it might be, then probably 30 seconds later, if you didn't call again, it would be VKM 481 all in order, third call, other units, please attend, blah, 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 blah. No response to all in order from 481. And then you'd get, 480 acknowledge we're attending, and you'd hear the sirens over the radio, and off they'd go, because you're not responding. And this happened a lot, where you might be in a yelling, screaming match, or there might be a lot of noise and commotion, and you just couldn't hear the radio. And then eventually you'd hear, 480, just so you know, they were off at this location. There's been 3 calls now for all in order, and then you get back on and go, VKM 481, all in order, apologies for that. We've just been in noisy. We've got one in custody. We're going to be returning. No requirement. The other units that can stand down, we're all sweet. And it'd be, 481 VKM acknowledged, thank you. And it was just that little safety thing back and forth. Yeah. And it was just life. It was just how life was. That it was just policing was talking on the radio.
It was, mate. Actually, I'm sorry, mate. I'm going to cut in there.
No, it's all. I'd finished.
I've got a hell of a story. And it's a pretty funny one when talking about, because that's something you mentioned it too. If a unit didn't call off for a safety check, everybody heard it. Everybody was always listening. And I remember one evening, or it was early morning actually. It was about 1 or 2 in the morning. I can't really remember the exact time, and we're in Catherine. I was working with a probie, training him up, and anyway, we're out at the hospital, and we heard 481 was off at this job, and it was a domestic. So you always get a bit worried about domestics, especially on the location, because most of the time we hear the location as well, and remember that. And anyway, I remember this one of the other vehicle, they're calling to it, and basically they second call and nothing, and then the third call, and then there wasn't an immediate response. And I said, all right, this is 480. Now attending lights and sirens, coming from the hospital. We're mobile now. And it had just rained in Catherine, and those 2-wheel drive Hiluxes are they were good with the weight of the cage on the back, but they were still a bit skiddy in the wet, especially when it just rained and you got the oil come to the surface. And anyway, I was hooking lights and sirens down, coming back into town, because they were just on the other side of town where the unit had checked off. And I remember if the nightclubs had just closed as well. So it must have been about 2 in the morning, and everybody's walking up both sides of the street as I'm coming into town. And I'm changing down gears because we got the old manual. Anyway, as I've changed down to help slow the vehicle down, I've compression locked. So the back wheels have just started skidding, and this police car, probably going about 100k an hour at the time, has started sliding sideways with lights and sirens. And I remember everybody just on the sidewalk, just looking at this police car go sliding past. Anyway, I was coming up to a roundabout, but those old roundabouts in Catherine were pretty flat. So I thought, all right, there's only one way I had. So I had to change it back up a gear and then floor it to straighten the police vehicle up. And I just went straight over the roundabout. And then, of course, managed to slow down for the next intersection, which was the traffic lights. I would have been stuffed if I got that one. But I remember my offsider at the time just holding on to the bloody, God help me bar on the side of the thing. But yeah. Anyway, at the end of that story, we got to them, but they called. I think not long after that, they just called in. They'd forgotten to put their radio on when they got out of the car, which does happen sometimes.
It does happen, yeah.
So it was, but yeah, there's a bit of a story for everybody listening.
Oh yeah, no, it creates a response, and I think the beauty of that, we can segue about how radio comms is so common, and it's so mundane that you have that in you're always listening to it. You don't even realize you're listening to it, but you can hear a job. Like, you'll hear what it does is gives you beautiful situational awareness as to what all the units are up to.
Yeah.
And I'll even just segue a little bit. As a shift supervisor in Darwin, the way the radio comms were divided up was Channel 1 Darwin was for Darwin City and for Casuarina sector. And then we had what we call Great Northern, because it was Greater Northern. So we used to call it Great Northern because everyone used to drink Great Northern. And that radio channel covered Palmerston and covered down to Catherine and all the little stations in between. So those radio stations used to both work. And because I was in Darwin City, I would tune both in. So I'd have a portable generally sitting in my car that would be listening to Great Northern because I wanted to know what was happening in the whole sector. And anyway, it was amazing because you could always listen and just get a sense of what was going on in the entire place. So the situational awareness that those radios provided was just brilliant. But I think what we'll move on to is that not just the everyday use of the radios, it was also you could hear, because they were such a mundane thing and you were listening to it constantly, subconsciously in the background, that you would trigger when something sounded out of the ordinary. And it might even be, yeah, VKM, yeah, stand by. Yep. And we go, hang on, what's going on there? And I remember a couple of times, especially as a supervisor, and it might have been on either channel. So it might have been on the Great Northern channel or Channel 1 Darwin. I would immediately go, VKM 202, what was that last unit? And just cut out. And they go, yeah, 202 VKM, just so you know, that is Casuarina, blah, blah, blah. They're off at this location. And they've just transmitted. Is that right, Joe? What was that call sign again? Yeah, it's 426. Yeah, 426, Darwin 202, safety check, or all in order. Nothing. And then I'd hit my lights and sirens and be heading that way. And I'd go, Casuarina 221, did you copy your last? So that was the Casuarina sergeant. They'd be, yeah, copy, I'm heading there as well. And then you'd hear Casuarina 424 on mobile to that location. So you didn't even need to be called for backup. You could hear something happen over the radio, and it didn't require any further from that unit. You just knew shit was going down and you were going. If you were available, like if you were just around, you were going. And a lot of the time, the general duties crews weren't necessarily available because as soon as you log on, they go, yeah, VKM 401, Roger, you're on duty, I'll get you to attend, blah, 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 blah. So you just went job, and then what happened is you'd go mobile. So, yeah, we're mobile clear from that job, members to update. So it might be no one's in custody, we just have to update the job. And they go, yeah, 481, acknowledge that, members to update. Can I get you to attend, blah, 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 blah. So you're going job to job to job. You're not patrolling, as the GD's vans generally, and this would be the way it is now, there's no patrolling. You're not just mobile clear, which was the old saying, because you have VKM 481, members to update, mobile clear. And they go, 481, VKM, Roger, clear. So you're available. You're now driving around. You're available for tasking, but they haven't got a job for you. That never happens anymore. They just send next, send next, send next, send next. They just go job to job to job, all shift. And that's what happens. And then at the end of shift, there's bloody 200 backlogged, and that's just the way it is now. That's just the way of the world. But back in the day, it might be that, especially the supervisors might be unattached. So we'd be floating around, and we were very quick to respond to a backup call because
Mm.
we turn up with a bit more experience. Often, I always carried long arms with me, so I either had a shotgun or an AR-15 in the boot of my car. So I had the capability, and I had an advanced first aid kit too, so I could respond pretty quickly to stuff and be a pretty handy unit. In Darwin, we were pretty lucky too. We had City Safe, and they weren't necessarily tasked to a job unless it was a pub fight or something in the entertainment precinct, because that would go to them. That was what they're there for. But quite often they were just patrolling and they were finding their own work. And they were very good at responding very quickly to a bit of an incident. So if a unit ever calls for backup, and that will get everyone will shut up, drop coffee, spit it on the ground, and run if they hear backup. And that was even faster if it was any unit call urgent, paramedics requesting police support at blah 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 blah. Every unit within 50 kilometres would throw what they were doing and drive the rims off every vehicle they had to support paramedics.
Yeah.
So, and fireys. I mean, it was very rare for fireys to need police backup, but ambos needed it a lot. And you got to remember, ambos are there to do nothing but good, and they are unarmed. They're not trained in self-defense, and they are now in the shit. So we're getting to them like you would not believe.
Oh yeah.
And we're not getting out of the car, and we're not asking questions.
Yeah.
We're taking receipts.
That's right.
So we'd get out of there, and it would be on for hell. Anyone given ambos the shits, we're going to get a face full of us.
Yeah.
So that's how it worked. And I don't apologise for that for 1 second. You don't get to touch a paramedic. No, you do not touch a paramedic. I can understand you trying to fight a cop.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I accept it, but I can understand why you might fight a cop. You do not touch a paramedic.
Yeah.
So, that was us, and that was where that radio call, if it ever came, and you would hear the heightened response from the comms operator. You would hear, any available unit VKM, we've got ambos or paramedics in distress, blah, blah, blah. And holy shit, you would just hear lights and sirens and wheels squealing.
Mate, yeah, it's actually even the Catherine Hospital, I remember, had an emergency that used to come straight through to the police station. And, and if that ever hit, the chairs would just flip upside down as the officers left them if they were sitting at their computers, and you'd have, well, I suppose you'd like to say 4 cars mobile, but usually 2 or 1, and go and license sirens to the hospital, because
at 180 k's an hour.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, it was, it's funny. And I think that segues nicely into that, hearing those sirens. We spoke about at the beginning, when you're in the shit at the other end, which we've both been many times.
Yeah.
I've had to call back up a number of times, and I thought I was stuffed. Like, I went, oh man, I am screwed. Like, they're going to turn up here to me in a bloody pile. If not killed, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, it was serious. I was pretty proud. I wouldn't call back up unless I needed it.
Yeah.
And when you're in a shit fight and you're outnumbered and you're trying to back off, or you're trying to get someone in custody, you're trying to take charge of a situation, and you're starting to lose, we've got a gun. People say, you've got a gun, why don't you shoot them? It's like, why would I? What the hell? Bloody, if it gets to that point, I will, but I mightn't be able to reach my gun.
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing. I might be in such a shit show, I can't even use lethal force against the lethal force coming at me. So I need help now. And I'm normally, a lot of the time I was by myself as a supervisor, but, early on I was always with a pair. In crime, we were generally in pairs. But there was nothing sweeter than that sound of sirens. And there was even nothing sweeter than hearing over the radio that other unit broadcasting, so transmitting. Yeah. So you'd hear a unit transmit, mobile, send details, location again. And then you'd hear VKM. But over the top of their voice, you would hear... You hear that siren. So you hear that siren over the radio, so you know that they're coming quick. And then they'd be asking for further details. Location, Larapinta Valley Camp, or this is Alice Springs. I'm changing up my locations constantly because I worked all over the bloody territory.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of referring to jobs where I heard this. And there was something, when you're on the ground and not through the radio, but in real life, you can hear the siren. It was manna from heaven.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was talking about earlier when we were doing that first aid triage exercise, which was probably a bit stressful for those poor buggers who just turned up to get their first aid certificate. And they get some burnt out, worn out old copper from the NT going, well, let's step it up a bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had them basically responding to a job very similarly. So what I did was I went through scenarios with my class where I said, all right, what I want you guys to do is I'm going to give you a piece of paper. One of you is the patient, one of you is the first aider. And it was normally, oh, you've been bitten by a snake, or you've fallen over and broken your leg, or you've cut your arm. We're talking like, you need an ambulance to come. We're talking that level of care. And then I said, okay, we're going to work in teams now, so we're going to have 3 of you. And righto, what we've got is this car has slid into a tree, and you've got a person in the front seat who's hysterical but doesn't appear to be injured, and you've got a driver who's in and out of consciousness and has got an obvious head wound. How do we treat that? And they're like, and now they're thinking. And I got them doing a couple of those, and they got pretty good. And they said, all right, now I want the class to divide in half. So there's about, 15 people in the class. I got them to divide into big teams. And I briefed one team to be the victims, and I dragged over the resus dolls. I had 4 or 5 little resus mannequins on the ground as well. And I briefed them, and I said, all right, you are travelling back from a wedding, and your bus has gone around a roundabout, and the bus has tipped over onto the guardrail, and many people of your party have been killed instantly and are very, very grotesquely injured. And the rest of you are extremely seriously injured, ranging from burns to terrible lacerations to spinal injuries to blah, blah, blah. And I did that. And then I briefed the other crew. I said, you're driving back from a wedding, and you're in a bus, and the bus in front of you has just rolled onto the handrail going around a roundabout. Deal with what you come across. And God bless them, they were pretty good actors. So the guys in the front are carrying on, and the other guys have got there, and you could see that quite a lot of them were very heightened because they knew it was based on real events, because they knew the story that I was talking. And I said, right. And then I stopped the scenario and I said, okay, so is there anything that you can do for these mannequins? And I said, keep in mind, these mannequins have got half their heads, they're half missing, they're half chopped in half. You can see lungs, you can see intestines, you can see this. Can you do anything for them? And they're going, oh my God, no. It's like, that's right, you can't. So move on and treat the living. What's the biggest thing that we need to do right now? Oh, we need to, no, stop. What do we need to do right now? We need to call 000. Yeah, you do. Big time. So let's get on there and get some 000 happening. And It was like, work through your doctor's ABCD. It's just a bigger problem. That's all. You're dealing with it the same way. You're not expected to save the world. You're just first aiders. So I had them doing that. And anyway, and then we swapped it up, and I swapped it to a plane crash, and we had burn injuries and stuff like that. So I gave them both an impossible task at the very last end of the day. And the feedback was really good. It was like, you pushed us way beyond our comfort zone, and we really appreciated that, because it was like, I could teach you how to tie a sling, or I could explain to you what an emergency is going to be like. And I want you guys to actually be good in an emergency, not just bloody, not just able to tie a sling right, which I've never tied a friggin' sling in my life. When was the last time you tied a sling on someone with a broken arm?
Mate, yeah.
Never. Zero. Hold your arm where it needs to be held. The ambulance is on its way.
Yeah, that's right.
Tying a sling. All I'm going to do is probably cut off the circulation to your neck and hurt your arm. I'm not tying a goddamn sling. And I remember that from my really early day first aid courses. But I digress a bit. So during those big triage exercises that I was running, Patsy, God bless her cotton socks, was playing a siren over the background towards the end when I was going to wrap up the scenario. She played a siren really loudly over her mobile phone, just off YouTube or something. And I saw a visceral reaction in everyone who were getting really involved in this scenario. And they went, oh, thank Christ the emergency services are here. And I even went, oh, like, how good is that sound? So I thought we could talk about that too. Like, how good is that sound when you're on the other end and you hear those sirens coming? And I know paramedics have told me when they're in the shit, when they got someone punching their head in, and the coppers turn up full noise, and they hear that screaming siren and that screeching brakes and the screeching tires, and then they hear doors open, and they hear, police, don't move, and whack, bang, crack, thump. They said it was just like the angels had descended, really ugly angels, had descended from heaven. And I think
Yeah,
that's for people who aren't. I know that coppers and ambos listening and fires and that will know, because I know in fire you can be overwhelmed by fire and have backup arrive to help you, and it's like, thank Christ for that. I
yeah,
think I'm talking more about the physical injury from other people, because we're talking about policing. So
yeah, yeah.
it's that visceral response. You got any examples there, mate?
Yeah, yeah, mate. I actually do. It's funny as you're talking. I've come up with all these bloody stories. And, but look, I'm going to start off with one. This is actually me, and it's not so much the sirens, but it's about the help showing up. So what happened was I was working in the TAC team at the time, and it was, I don't know, about 9 o'clock at night or something, and I was tasked because, of course, we're really short staffed. So the TAC team at the time would help out, with general duty stuff or crime specifically. So if crime needed somebody, to do something, they would. And I'd been put in charge of the crime scene guard of a rape scene. I do apologise for anybody that triggers anybody, but yeah, it's just an unfortunate part of the job, and these things
It
do happen.
happens.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. So I was in charge of this scene, and it was in a, I wouldn't say it's a thoroughfare, but it's definitely fairly regularly walked by um, the scumbags of society, let's say.
Mm.
And it was just down one of these streets, and it was going to more of a housing commission sort of area. Anyway, everything was good. I'd picked up. Of course, I had a radio. However, it had. The radio was a bit dicky, and the battery like died on it. But as that was happening, there was a domestics or a fight. It started off as a domestic, but there was probably about 6 or 7 people getting involved, and it was actually. I mean, you'd know the address. It's actually pretty close to where the old street murder down that street.
Mm. Yeah.
So and anyway, I called in over the radio. Of course, the radio went dead, like, because I need backup. I'd observed this. We need a police unit here. Anyway, the radio went dead. I'm going, oh shit. Now I'm really in the shit, because they identified me as a police officer, of course, and their attention started to look towards me, and I'm there by myself. Anyway, I'm talking to him, and meanwhile, I've got my mobile phone out, and I called the other crew that were unmarked driving around as a TAC team, and I called them. I said, "Look, guys, I need you here right now, like right now. It's starting to get out of hand. They've identified me. I'm here trying to look after a crime scene. I'm here by myself. I can't get comms. Blah blah blah." Anyway, I've sat there, and they said, "Yep, coming." Problem is, my mobile phone has also gone dead, because this is back in the day when mobile phones were pretty, they never had the battery that they do these days. And so I'm sitting there going, I'm like,
It
yeah,
wasn't your day, my boy.
well, yeah, it was not. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and it was funny. I could see that they didn't do their license sirens, because they just wanted to come up unsuspectingly, and they drove up the road. But I knew the car as soon as I could see it in the distance, and I'm sat there, and all I'm doing is trying to de-escalate the situation and keep their attention from not attacking me. And look, there's a number of different ways we can talk about that. Another, like, you've just got to pick your targets on how you talk to people. Anyway, it was so funny, because the guys, the two guys, good mates of mine, very good mates of mine, they pulled up behind, and of course, all the attention's on me, so they didn't even see it. Anyway, one guy was the main aggressive, and he was the aggressor in the domestic as well. And as soon as they've opened their doors, I've gone, right, you're under arrest. And he started to walk towards me. At that time, both of them grabbed him from behind and just flung him round, face planted him on the ground, because he was coming to hit me. And
Yeah.
it was the best feeling of having back up there. I can still remember it clearly.
Yeah.
Just having that, watching them come, and I knew that I was going to be safe when they got there.
Yeah.
But I had to just try and hold off until until that last moment. So
Well,
it,
realistically, I mean, Mike Tyson's not going to. Well, he's probably a bad example, because he might roll 6 or 7 people, but 6 or 7 people, you concentrate on fighting one person who can throw punches, and all of a sudden you're getting attacked by other people. You got nothing.
Yeah.
I don't care
Yeah.
how tough you think you are. You're stuffed. If you try and fight you try and fight one person, it's very, very difficult. You try and fight 2, it's almost impossible.
Yep.
You fight 3, I'm saying that unless you're an absolute professional bloody fighter, and not some martial artist, I'm talking about a proper professional, probably UFC or something. They might be able to have a crack at 3, but you're surrounded by 7. You're not going to win.
No.
You're not going to win. I don't care who you are. You're going to get flogged.
Yep.
Because they'll dog hit you, and then someone else will dog hit you, and you can't defend against 14 hands and feet and Christ and knives. Who knows what's coming at you?
Yeah, well, exactly right.
People beating everyone in the crowd and bashing the whole crowd, that is Hollywood bullshit.
Yeah.
So, mate, that's it. And when you suddenly get those numbers, you're a lot better off, because cowards will attack one person, but as soon as there's more than one, they won't. They stop. Even if they know they outnumber you still, they will generally stop, because they know that they're fighting 3 competent people and you're going to get beaten. And
Exactly.
I know the days you're talking about. We had limited weaponry. You had a bit of pepper spray, and you had a firearm, and basically that was it. And you were nowhere near firearms, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we didn't even have tasers back then.
No.
They were still coming in, but it weren't regularly worn even by a lot of officers. Usually, I think then it came into one person in the unit would actually carry a taser.
Yeah. But how naked do you feel when you don't have an operational radio?
Oh yes,
It's
yeah,
your
mate.
lifeline.
When that radio went dead, I'm just sitting there going, I just lost communication with the outside world.
Yeah.
Or and it's like, thinking back, it's shocking.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there going, "There's all my help," and then of course when my mobile phone went dead, I'm going, I'm fucked.
Yeah. What do you do now?
Yeah, yeah,
Coo-ee.
yeah.
That's about it.
Well, and
Yeah.
also I'm tasked with keeping a crime scene secure.
Yeah, and a very serious crime scene.
That's
So, yeah.
right. Yeah,
But yeah, I think we can recap, mate. We've sort of carried, which is good. I'm glad. I think the intention of this one was just to talk about the radio. It was just something no one thinks about, but yeah, it's weird. It's like putting your wallet in your pocket. You don't even think about it, but you'd be buggered without it. Like, you just sort of, it's weird. And I think what triggered me actually thinking of this was the fact that so many people, and these are competent humans who go about daily business, a radio is so foreign to them. Whereas to me, when I've got a radio, I feel I'm comfy. It's like my teddy bear. I've got a radio.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. And even these days, where a UHS probably useless, but
yeah.
it didn't matter. It's still like, but I can talk to people. Like, I'm sweet. And anyway, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole lately, and I've been doing a bit of stuff because I teach radio and I use radios all the time with the RFS, and I've just been looking into it a little bit more so I can teach it better, because I want to know a lot about what I'm teaching, and to have the scientific backup. If someone asks a curly question, I want to be able to answer that. So I think that's why I thought of this. And then just to combine it with that sirens at the first aid course was just and all coppers will just go, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about there." I get you. So and ambos and emergency services understand.
Here's one for all the first responders. Like, send in your stories. Yeah, like just get in contact with us. We'll happily share them, because it is actually very important. For especially that part of society that listens to this, that doesn't quite understand or can't relate to it. And I know even the first responders can relate to it, but they love hearing about it, because there's no better sound than those sirens in the background when they're coming.
Oh, manna from heaven.
It is.
It's just all of a sudden you've got hope where there is none. And mate, I'll never forget in Alice Springs. I think I've already told the story before, but where me and my mate Danny Bierman were outnumbered, surrounded. We're big boys. We were very experienced, very capable. We were surrounded by about 15 people, and they wanted us gone. They weren't brave enough to attack, but had 2 or 3 of them attacked, the rest would have swarmed. I've emptied my party pack, which is the big pepper spray. I emptied it, and they were still coming, and it was on. And I've called back up in Arrowfield in Alice Springs, and when I heard all those units responding, I felt really, really good, which is very lucky in Alice. Normally the units are so tied up, you'll be struggling to get back up. But they came, and when I heard those sirens, I thought, we win. We win, you bastards.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't cause this. You people are causing a massive problem. There were a lot of 000 calls from this group about this group, I should say. They were causing a lot of people a lot of fear, and they were brave enough to try and have. Well, they weren't that brave, but they had a crack at 2 coppers. And yeah, when the cavalry turned up, there was not a lot of bravery coming back that way from them. So, and they still outnumbered us. I think in the end we had 5 cops there, and there was about 15 of them, but we owned them.
Yeah.
So it was, there was no bravery there. But when they had 2, they thought they had a crack. So
yeah. And how often do you see that, mate?
Oh, constant.
Yeah.
Big, tough. They talk tough, but
yeah.
When it comes to the punch, total cowards. So, happy to group up and mob, but once they're challenged with a not even an even fight, they terrified.
Yeah.
Run crying.
Definitely.
And then play victim, which is hilarious. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah, we're talking about those sirens, and just I remember hearing those sirens and going, "They're coming, Dan! They're coming! Yeah, I can hear them, brother." It was bloody manna from heaven. It gives you a lift. It's like someone yelling Queenslander in the state of origin, mate. It just gives a little lift. Yeah. And I dedicate that comment to my lovely friends at the E-Ball pub in New South Wales.
I'm going to have to come down there one night for one of those, mate, and wear my Queensland jersey.
Oh, it'll be good, mate. Be good. Yeah. So I reckon that'll do us, mate. But yeah, you made a brilliant point there. We want to hear you. We want to hear your stories. So first responders or anybody, we want a bloody remote, a rural fire volunteer. If you've heard those sirens and you loved it, you let us know. We want to hear your comms stories. If you've got something that, comms is it's just such a mundane part of the job, but it's so no one thinks about it. So.
And some of the shit you hear over the radio too, it's like not all that's serious. Sometimes there's some funny stuff as well.
Oh, very, yeah. Actually, a really important point here: comms operators. We want to hear from you. From those legends who sit in that big freezing building and communicate. You're the ones on the other end of the radio when we're out there in the shit. Those guys are lifelines, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear some stories from comms.
Yep. Yeah, a big shout out to all the comms operators, because they sit there and they do I think a horrific job, because there's a lot of unknowns when you're sitting on the other end of the radio, as both of you and I have at certain times, especially in the early days, and there's a lot of unknown. So they've got to do a lot of work in trying to gather all the information, get as much information even from the calls coming in to give to the cops, best, as much information as they can before they get to the job, so they can do better risk assessments, and plans. So yeah, a big shout out to the comms operators. You do a fantastic job, and you and I probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them.
Oh, mate, yeah, no, fantastic. But yeah, I think that's not a bad rap, mate. What do you reckon?
Mate, I reckon, but before we go, we do have to do the carton of the week.
Carton of the week.
We're going to have to start doing a couple in an episode, I think, because we're getting quite a few coming in. Some of them are pretty funny too, but mate, we've picked out this one for this week, which I thought was pretty good. So, mate, basically this guy, he's on night shift with his partner, and they were tasked with offenders on premises from CAD. So the job started, one or more unknown offenders on the property. They have stolen car keys from the address, and the owners of the property are inside. So they arrive and it's dark. It's obviously late at night or very early morning. It was pitch black, no moon, and the property was semi-rural, surrounded by dense bush. Now, if anybody, Will and Bill are probably...
and we've been there a million times, yeah.
That's right. So anyway, they got there, they obtained an account from the victims and started a search around the property to see if they could locate any offenders or tracks or any movements, basically. And they said the night is still enough to hear the crunching of his flogged out cartilage in his knees.
Poor old bastard.
Yeah. And then he hears the noise of twigs breaking on the ground. He goes, he immediately starts running through the bush and calls the police challenge. Please stop, do not move. The noises continue, and after a brief foot chase, he's met with a kangaroo.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck locking that bastard up.
How
Yeah,
Australian is that?
that's good. That's a good Aussie carton. You've done a foot chase, which I mean, given the fact your knees are shot out, I'm taking it you're not 18. So,
No.
um, you've had a foot chase with a kangaroo. That kangaroo is going to kick your ass, and
Yep.
good luck trying to prove anything he's done wrong in court. So, yeah, that's good. That's a carton. That's a
It,
carton.
it
Yeah.
is definitely a carton. Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And he goes, his partner immediately started pissing himself laughing. The fact only did he engage in a foot chase with a kangaroo, but he also called the police challenge to it.
Oh yeah. No. Drop it, Skippy, or I'll blow your brains out. Yeah. I'll take you to the box afterwards and get money for you, you bastard. Yeah, no, that's good.
So,
Excellent.
yep, no, that's definitely a carton, mate. But we're going to have to get them together because we've got about 5 others.
Yeah, no, all good. We want more. We want more. So send
We
in your
do.
carton of the week. We will keep you anonymous. We don't care. We just want to hear a good story.
Exactly.
We're not in the business of getting people investigated. We're just in the business of having a laugh.
Exactly.
So, yeah, let us know, and not just police. I don't think we got one from a fiery. So
We
let us
do,
know.
mate. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Which I think you and your colleagues these days will appreciate.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
There's
definitely. So no, let us know. It's we love it. It's just what it is. It's humanising the emergency services and the police force, in particular, because when we're 200 cops,
yeah.
But yeah, humanise it. We make
Yep.
mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are bloody funny,
Oh
and we want to
yeah.
have a laugh. I know that's
Yep.
excellent. Good on you. Keep them coming. We love it.
Yep. And and next week, listen in, and we'll probably do the fiery one. I reckon.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
yeah.
they
Keep
are,
them coming.
and they give me a good laugh. So, all right, Damo. I reckon, mate, that will just about finish us up, don't you reckon?
I think so, mate. It's been the two ordinary cops. It's always a pleasure, and we'll be back next week like we always do.
All right. See you later.